Hey Derp, I'm sorry you're feeling down. Hopefully this does help cheer you up. There we go. Found where the sound was coming from. Got that taken care of. Okay. Now, I've been told that people can hear my mouse clicking. Is that true? Because I'm trying to figure out what I need to adjust to make that stop. See it appearing there, but hey, Metastep, how you doing? All right. Um. Hey, at least you finished your video. That's what's important. Let's see here. I think it's gain, but maybe it is gain. Let's try that. Do I need to turn it up or do I turn it down? Or is it threshold? Or is it ratio? Oh my god, I hate this. One of them might be, hey Paul, how you doing? All right, I'm gonna do this 3 times. Tell me if you hear it. Okay, I technically did it more than 3 times, but do you hear that? Oops, nope, that's not what we wanted. That's not what we want either. Why is nothing working? Oh, I know what I did wrong here. Hold on. We're having problems. Stupid problems. So when I'm quiet, you can hear the clicking? All right. So now I got to figure out what might stop that. Is it threshold? Is it gain? Is it attack? I don't know. This is so fucking. Let's move that up to. Nope. Uh, well, I have a roadcaster, and I'm trying to figure out what I would use to try to minimize that. You know. Haha. Funny. Funny. Okay. Not that. I don't think that's a setting in here. I wonder if I can. Probably. Maybe I can do that in here. Do. Stop that. Do, do. Try that. How's that? I'm clicking. Still? Well, there was another clicky before that was my dog. Okay. Any other sound problems that I should probably address before I move on to anything else? Since I have all this stuff open anyway. Is my sibilance good? All right. All right. We'll see. Did I mean to close that? I think I meant to close that. I think we're okay I do indeed still need it, Paul. Uh, but no rush when you get the chance. No, you're fine. There's one thing I've learned in life. It's when someone's doing something for you for free, don't complain. Let's see where we left off, huh? Before I get started, give you guys the preambles. Oh no, what did I do to the page? Excuse me. If you are interested, pop on into the description and you can visit the Evil Laboratory and get 10% off of all of your Evil Laboratory needs, from notebooks to uh, mugs. And of course, laboratories get chilly, so there's hoodies and shirts and mouse pads and all sorts of things that you could possibly need. So please pop on in and take a look and use code horror amarata. I can't even say my own name tonight. Horror. Oh my God, Gary's infested my brain. Horror amarata. There we go. For 10% off. Jesus Christ. We're doing this tonight. Baldur's Gate tomorrow night. There will be chloritis, yeah, right. There will be 7 Days to Die this weekend. Yeah. Then you can slash the like. Yeah, that's a great thing. I like it when people like things. So, for our first story, Fable, as it would be, we have The Fatal Courtship. A lion whom a mouse had freed from a snare was so grateful to the mouse that he told him to name what he most desired, and he should have his wish. The mouse, fired with ambition, said, "I desire the hand of your daughter in marriage." This the lion good naturedly gave him, and called the young lioness to come that way. She did so, and rushed up so heedlessly that she did not see the small suitor, but placed her paw on him, and crushed him to death. The moral of the story is, bad wishing makes bad guessing. Or getting, bad getting. Bad wishing makes bad getting. God damn it. Hey, Shadow Warden, how's it going? The Two Rabbits. A rabbit who was about to have a family entreated another rabbit to lend her her hutch until she was able to move about again, and assured her that she should then have it without fail. The other readily consented, and with a great deal of civility, resigned it to her immediately. When the time was up, she came and paid the first rabbit a visit, and very modestly intimated that now she was up and well, she hoped she might have her hutch again, for it was really inconvenient for her to be without it any longer. She must therefore be so free as to desire her to provide herself with other lodgings as soon as she could. The other replied that she truly was ashamed of having kept her so long out of her own house, but it was not upon her own account, for, indeed, she was well enough to go anywhere, so much as that of her young, who were yet so weak that she was afraid they would not be able to follow her. And if she would be so good as to let her stay a fortnight longer, she should take it for the greatest obligation in the world. The second rabbit was so good natured and compassionate as to comply with this request too, but at the end of the term, came and told her positively that she must turn out, for she could not possibly let her be there a day longer. Must turn out, said the other. We will see about that. For I promise you, unless you can beat me and my whole little litter of young, you are never likely to have anything more to do here. The moral of the story is majorities promote tyranny. Gee, does that sound familiar to anybody? Sorry about that. The Ass, the Dog, and the Wolf. A laden ass was jogging, followed by his tired master, at whose heels came a hungry dog. Their path lay across the meadow, and the man stretched himself on the turf and went to sleep. The ass fed on the pasture and was in no hurry at all to move. The dog, alone, being gnawed by the pangs of hunger, found that the time passed heavily. Pray, dear companion, he said to the ass, stoop down that I may take my dinner from the pannier. The ass turned a deaf ear and went on cropping away the green and tender grass. The dog persisted, and at last the ass replied, Wait, can't you, till our master wakes? He will give you your usual portion without fail. Just then a famished wolf appeared upon the scene and sprang toward the throat of the ass. Help, help, dear Towser, cried the ass, but the dog would not budge. Wait till our master wakes, he said. He will come to your helps without fail. The words no sooner spoken than the ass lay strangled upon the sod. The moral of the story is favor beget favors. Hey, Jawa Trader, how you doing tonight? I need to fix this 1 second. There. Oh, I need some good background music. Let me have one moment. Where is that? Here we are. And there. And there we go. Oh, damn. Didn't want to do that yet. Where is it? Here. Oh, no, I have to. Okay, hold on. I'll work on that in a second. And this one. And this one. And that one. Okay. Then I can. Okay. You're plugging your earbuds in for this? Okay. All right. Press OK. And where's the volume thing? Huh? Is that loud enough for you guys to hear it? How's that? Hey, Static. All right, cool. All right, we did that. All right, the traveler and the bear. Two men about to journey through a forest agreed to stand by each other in any dangers that might befall. They had not gone far before a savage bear rushed out from a thicket and stood in their path. One of the travelers, a light, nimble fellow, got up into a tree. The other, seeing that there was no chance to defend himself single-handedly, fell flat on his face and held his breath. The bear came up and smelled at him, and taking him for dead, went off again into the wood. The man in the tree came down and, rejoining his companion, asked him with a sly smile what the wonderful secret which he had seen the bear whisper into his ear. "Why," the other replied, "he told me to take care for the future and not to put any confidence in such cowardly rascals as you." The moral of the story? Trust not fine promises. The bee and the fly. A bee, observing a fly frisking about her hive, asked him in a very angry tone what he did there. Is it for such fellows as you, said she, to intrude into the company of the queens of the air? You have great reason, truly, replied the fly, to be out of humor. I am sure they must be mad, and who would have any concern with so quarrelsome a nation? And why so, may I ask, returned the enraged bee. We have the best laws and are governed by the best policies in the world. We feed upon the most fragrant flowers, and all our business is to make honey. Honey, which equals nectar, low, tasteless wretch who lives upon nothing but vile things. We live as we can, rejoined the fly. Poverty, I hope, is no crime, but passion is one, I am sure. The honey you make is sweet, I grant you, but your heart is all bitterness, for to be revenged on an enemy you will destroy your own life, and are so foolish in your rage as to do more mischief to yourself than to your enemy. Take my word for it, one had better have fewer talents and use them more wisely. The moral of the story is well-governed communities should make well-governed individuals. Oh my god. Who knew Aesop's Fables were so based? I feel like the music might be a little loud. Now it's probably a little quiet. I'm so fussy. How's that? You still hear it? No, you can't. There's absolutely nothing going on there. There. How about that? Okay. A man bitten by a dog. A man who had been bitten by a dog was advised by an old woman to cure the wound by rubbing a piece of bread in it and giving it to the dog that had bitten him. He did so, and Aesop, passing by at the time, asked him what he was about. The man told him, and Aesop replied, I am glad you do it privately. For if the rest of the dogs in town were to see you, we should be eaten up alive. The moral of the story is season counsel with sense. Way too many people don't do that. The hares and the frogs. The hares once took serious counsel among themselves whether death itself would not be better than their wretched lot. What a sad state is ours, they said, never to eat in comfort, always to sleep in fear, to be startled by a shadow, and to fly with beating heart at the rustle of the leaves. Better death by far. And off they went accordingly to drown themselves in a neighboring lake. Some scores of frogs who were enjoying the moonlight on the bank, scared at the approach of the hares, jumped into the water. The splashes woke fresh fears in the breasts of the timid hares, and they came to a full stop in their flight. One wise old fellow among them cried, "Hold, brothers! See, weak and fearful we are, beings existed that, see, weak and fearful as we are, beings exist that are more weak and fearful still. Why then should we seek to die? Let us rather make the best of our lot, such as it is." The moral of the story is, there are always some whose station is worse than your own. Hey Jack, how's it going? This playlist is actually one from, he's a really old, not old, but one of my former community members who I haven't seen in forever, unfortunately. I think you can still find his stuff out there. He's called Sir Real, SIR, capital REAL. I would give him a look up. He has some good stuff. Hey, Kai. Yeah, same with me. And reading them really is... kind of reminds you of a lot of things, doesn't it? All right. The Generous Lion. A lion, having slain a bullock, stood over it, lashing his sides with his tail. A thief who was passing by stopped and impudently demanded half his shares. "You are always too ready to take what does not belong to you," answered the lion. "Go your way. I have nothing to say to you." The thief saw that the lion was not to be trifled with and went off. Just then a traveler came up, and seeing the lion, modestly withdrew. The generous beast, with courteous air, called him forward and, dividing the bullock in halves, told the man to take one, and in order that the latter might be under no restraint, carried his own portion away into the forest. The moral of the story is, modesty gains favor in a king's eyes. The Tortoise and the Eagle. A tortoise, weary of crawling about on the ground at a snail's pace, desired to fly in the air like the birds, and gave out that if any bird would take him up into the clouds and show him the world, he would tell him in return where to find the treasures hidden in the earth. The eagle thereupon did as he wished, but finding that the tortoise could not keep his word, carried him up once more and let him fall on the hard rock, where he was dashed to pieces. The moral of the story is, never make rash promises. The Peacock and the Magpie. The birds once met together to choose a king, and among others, the peacock. Oh my god. Let's try that again. I don't know why I'm having such a problem all of a sudden. Actually, I do. I need to drink some water. Okay. The Peacock and the Magpie. The birds once met together to choose a king, and among others the peacock was a candidate. Spreading his showy tail and stalking up and down with affected grandeur, he caught the eyes of the silly multitude by his brilliant appearance and was elected by acclamation. Just as they were going to proclaim him, the magpie stepped forth into the midst of the assembly and thus addressed the new king. "May it please your majesty elect to permit a humble admirer to propose a question. As our king, we put our lives and fortunes in your hands. If, therefore, the eagle, the vulture, and the kite should in the future, as they have many times in the past, make descent upon us, what means would you take for our defense?" This pithy question opened the eyes of the birds to the weaknesses of their choice. They cancelled the election and have ever since regarded the peacock as a vain pretender and considered the magpie to be as good a speaker as any of their number. The moral of the story is the crowd is caught by display. Yeah, right. Hey, Sleazy, how's it going? Oh wow, this just started going weird. Wow. Is it the book? Oh, that's the problem. I figured that out. Okay, so we finished that one. The Ass and the Sick Lion. It was reported that the lion was sick and confined to his den, where he would be happy to see any of his subjects who might come to pay the homage that was due to him. Many accordingly went in and fell easy prey to the old lion, who devoured them at his leisure. But it was observed that the ass was very carefully kept away. The lion noticed his absence and sent one of his jackals to express a hope that he would show he was not insensible to motives of respect and charity by coming and paying his duty like the rest. The ass told the jackal to offer his sincerest reverence to his master and to say that he had more than once been on the point of coming to see him, but the truth of the matter, he observed dryly, is that all the footprints I see go into the cave, but none come out again. So for the present, my health demands that I stay away. The moral of the story is it is wise to see one's way out before one ventures in. The Fox and the Bramble. A fox hotly pursued by hounds jumped through a hedge, and his feet were sadly torn by a bramble that grew in its midst. He fell to licking his paws with many curses against the bramble for its unkind treatment. Softly, softly, good words, if you please, Master Fox, said the bramble. I thought you knew better than to lay hold of one whose nature it is to lay hold of others. The moral of the story is never trust the untrustworthy. The Sheep Biter. A certain shepherd had a dog in whom he placed such great trust that he would often leave the flock to his sole care. As soon as his master's back was turned, however, the cur, although well fed and kindly treated, used to worry the sheep and would sometimes kill one and devour a portion. The man at last found out how much his confidence had been abused, and resolved to hang the dog without mercy. When the rope was put around his neck, the dog pleaded for his life and begged his master to hang the wolf, who had done 10 times as much harm to the flock as he had. That may be, replied the man sternly, but you are 10 times the greater villain for it. Nothing shall save you from the fate which your treachery deserves. The moral of the story is the most dangerous enemy is the one within. Did I tap the... God damn it. All right. The Council of Horses. Once upon a time, a brash young colt, dissatisfied with the lot of his kind, complained loudly to the Council of Horses. How abject our race! Are we condemned to slavery and servitude because our sires so willingly bore the chain? It is right that men should exploit our strength. Were we created only to serve their needs, dragging their plowshares, sweating in their harnesses, groaning beneath the loads they pile on our backs? Reject the rein and spurn the spur. Let us be like the lion and the tiger and assert our claim to freedom and independence, neighs of assent broke out among the assembled horses, and there was a great pawing of the ground and applause. But all were silent when a steed of great age and long experience addressed the assembly thus: "When I had the health and strength of my youth, I toiled as you do. Now my grateful owner rewards my past pains by allowing me to roam freely and to free upon the crops yielded by the fields I once plowed. It is true that men expect us to lend our pains to his endeavors, but does he not divide his care through all our labors of the year? Does he not provide us with buildings to shield us from the inclement weather and keep our hay dry? Does he not share with us the bounty of the harvest? Since it is decreed that all creatures should help one another, ought we not be happy with our lot?" Seeing the wisdom of what the elder said, the horses previously fired by the young colt's discontent agreed, and the tumult ceased. The moral of the story is, those who know their station in life know the greatest contentment. The Cock and the Jewel. Where's that? A hungry cock, scratching for food in the straw in the barnyard, happened to turn up a jewel, feeling quite sure that it was something precious, but not knowing well what to do with it. He addressed it with an air of affected wisdom as follows: "You are a very fine thing, no doubt, but you are not at all to my tastes. For my part, I would rather have one good grain of barley than all the jewels in the world." The moral of the story is, a thing is of value only so far as it is of use. The Owl and the Grasshopper. Hey, Dave. The Owl and the Grasshopper. An owl who was sitting in a hollow tree, dozing away a long summer's afternoon, was very much disturbed by a rogue of a grasshopper who kept singing in the grass beneath. So far, indeed, from keeping quiet or moving away at the request of the owl, the grasshopper sang all the more, and called her an old blinker that only came out at night when all the honest people were gone to bed. The owl waited in silence for a short time, and then artfully addressed the grasshopper as follows: "Well, my dear, if one cannot be allowed to sleep, it is something to be kept awake by such a pleasant little pipe as yours, which makes the most agreeable music, I must say. And now I think of my mistress Pallas gave me the other day a bottle of delicious nectar. If you will take the trouble to come up, you shall have a drop, and it will clear your voice nicely." The silly grasshopper, beside himself with the flattery, came hopping up to the owl. When he came within reach, the owl caught him, killed him, and finished her nap in comfort. The moral of the story is, flattery works better than threats. So completely off topic. Did anyone see there's a new Star Trek strategy game for PC? A Star Trek Fable. I don't know if you could do that at this point. The Lion in Love. A lion once fell in love with a fair daughter of a forester and demanded her of her father in marriage. The man dared not refuse, though he would gladly have done so, but he told the suitor that his daughter was so young and delicate that he could only consent after the lion's teeth were drawn and his claws cut off. The lion was so enslaved by love that he agreed to this without a murmur, and it was accordingly done. The forester then seized the club and laid him dead upon the spot, and so broke off the match. The moral of the story is, foolish love brings sorrows. The Sow and the Wolf. A sow lay one day in the sty with her whole litter of pigs about her. A wolf, who longed for a small porker, but knew not how to get it, tried to worm himself into the good opinion of the mother. "How do you find yourself today, Miss Sow?" he said. "A little fresh air would certainly do you great good. Now do go abroad and air yourself a little, and I will gladly mind your children till you return." "Many thanks for the offer," replied the sow. I know very well what kind of care you would take of my little ones. But if you really wish to be as obliging as you pretend, you will not show me your face again. The moral of the story is, services from strangers are to be suspected. Now we regularly take services from strangers. It's kind of interesting how that works, huh? Foolishness very often brings sorrow amid a step. It doesn't matter if it's in love or something else. The Thief and His Mother. A little boy who went to school stole one of his schoolfellows' books and took it home. His mother, so far from correcting him, took the book and sold it, and gave him an apple for his pains. In the course of time, the boy became a thief, and at last was tried for his life and condemned. He was led to the gallows. A great crowd of people followed, and among them his mother, weeping bitterly. Seeing her, he prayed the officers to grant him the favor of a few parting words with her, and his request was freely granted. He went to his mother, put his arm around her neck, and making as though he'd whisper something in her ear, bit it off. Her cry of pain drew everybody's eyes upon them, and great was the indignation that such a time he should add another violence to his list of crimes. Nay, good people, he said, do not be deceived. My first theft was that of a book, which I gave to my mother. Had she whipped me for it instead of praising me, I should not have come to the gallows now that I am a man. The moral of the story is, spare the rod, spoil the child. The irony. People really don't remember these stories. Do they even teach them anymore? I have to wonder. I need to move my keyboard before I keep resting my book on it. There. Yeah, unfortunately we do, derp. The Fox and the Ape. Upon the decease of the lion, the beasts of the forest assembled to choose another king. The apes made so many grimaces and played so many antic tricks that he was elected by a large majority, and the crown was placed upon his head. The fox, envious of this distinction, seeing soon after a trap baited with a piece of meat, approached the new king and said with mocking humility, "May it please your majesty, I have found on your domain a treasure to which, if you will deign to accompany me, I will conduct you." The ape thereupon set off with the fox, and upon arriving at the spot, laid his paw upon the meat. Snap went the trap, and caught him by the fingers. Mad with the shame and the pain, he called the fox a thief and a traitor. The fox laughed heartily, and going off, said over his shoulder with a sneer, "You a king, and not understanding a trap." The moral of the story: those who cannot manage their own affairs are unfit to manage others. Yes, the moral of the story is indeed beat your kids. Especially when they misbehave, whatever. The Farmer and the Stork. A farmer set a net in his field to catch the cranes and geese which came to feed upon the newly springing corn. He took several, and with them a stork, who pleaded for his life on the ground that he was neither a goose nor a crane, but a poor harmless stork. "That may be very true," replied the man, "but as I have taken you in bad company, you must suffer the same punishment." The moral of the story is, evil company proves more than fair professions. Oh, okay, I get it now. You gotta remember, some of these words have more than one meaning. The Prince and the Painted Lion. A certain king had an only son, of whom he was dotingly fond. The prince delighted in hunting, and went every day into the forest in chase of the wild beasts. His father believed firmly in dreams, omens, and the like, and dreaming one night that his son was killed by a lion, resolved that he should not go into the forest any more. He therefore built a spacious tower and kept the prince there, closely confined. That his captivity may be less tedious to bear, he surrounded him with books, music, and pictures, and on the walls of the tower were painted in life-size all the beasts of the chase, and among the rest, a lion. The prince stood one day, gazing for a long time at the picture, and, in his rage at being imprisoned, he struck the lion a violent blow with his fist, saying, "Thou cruel beast, art the cause of all my grief. Had it not been for the lying dream of thee, which came to my father, I should now be free." The point of the nail in the wainscot under the canvas entered his hand through the force of his blow. The wound became inflamed, and the youth died from its effects. The moral of the story is, fancied dangers lead to real ones. The Miser. A miser once buried all his money in the earth at the foot of a tree, and went every day to feast upon the sight of his treasure. A thievish fellow, who had watched him at this occupation, came one night and carried off the gold. The next day, the miser, finding his treasure gone, tore his clothes and filled the air with his lamentations. A neighbor, hearing his outcry, learning the cause, said, "Pray do not grieve so, but go and get a stone, place it in the hole, and fancy it as your gold. It will be quite as much service as the money was." The moral of the story is, wealth not used is of no value at all. The Man and the Weasel. A man caught a weasel and was about to kill it. The little animal prayed earnestly for his life. "You will not be so unkind," he said to the man, "as to slay a poor creature who kills your mice for you." "For me," answered the man, "that's a good joke. For me, you say, as if you did not catch them more for your own pleasure than for my profit. As to making away with my food, you know that you do as much harm as the mice themselves. You must make some better excuse than that before I shall feel so inclined to spare you." Having said this, he strangled the weasel without more ado. The moral of the story is, a poor excuse is a dangerous thing. The Lion, the Ass, and the Fox. The lion, the ass, and the fox went hunting together, and it was agreed what it. Haven't we already read this? Seems like a repeat. No, we'll read it again anyway. The Lion, the Ass, and the Fox. The lion, the ass, and the fox went hunting together, and it was agreed whatever was taken should be shared among them. They caught a large fat stag, which the lion ordered the ass to divide. The ass took a deal of pains to divide the stag into 3 pieces, which should be nearly as equal as possible. The lion, enraged with him for what he considered a want of proper respect to his quality, flew upon him and tore him to pieces. He then called on the fox to divide. The fox, nibbling off a small portion for himself, left the rest for the lion's share. The lion, highly pleased with this mark of respect, asked the fox where he had learned such politeness and good breeding. "To tell the truth, sire," replied the fox, "I was taught it by the ass that lies dead there." The moral of the story is, better to learn by the misfortunes of others than by your own. Okay, so it's a different story, but interesting. Weasels are interesting. The shipwrecked man in the sea. A shipwrecked man cast upon the beach fell asleep after his struggle with the waves. When he woke up, he bitterly reproached the sea for its treachery in enticing men with its smooth and smiling surface, and then, when they were well embarked, turning in fury upon them and sending both ship and sailors to destruction. The sea arose in the form of a woman and replied, "Lay not the blame on me, sailor, but on the winds. By nature I am as calm and safe as the land itself, but the wind fall upon me with their gusts and gales and lash me into fury that is not natural to me." The moral of the story is, place blame where it is due. The lion and the slave. A runaway slave once met up with a lion who had trod upon a thorn, and who came towards him wagging his tail and holding up his lame foot as if he were to say, "I am a supplicant, and seek your aid." The slave boldly exclaimed, "Oh, damn it. I'm just going to start that one again." The lion and the slave. A runaway slave once met up with a lion who had trod upon a thorn, and who came up towards him wagging his tail and holding up his lame foot as if he would say, "I am a supplicant and seek your aid." The slave boldly examined the wound, discovered the thorn, and placing the lion's foot upon his lap, pulled it out and relieved the animal of his pain. The lion joyfully returned to the forest. Some time after, the slave was captured and condemned to be cast to the lion. The lion proved to be the one he had befriended. On being relieved from his cage, he recognized the slave as the man who had healed him, and, instead of attacking him, approached and placed his foot upon the man's lap. The king, as soon as he had heard the tale, ordered the lion to be set free again in the forest, and the slave to be pardoned and given his liberty. The moral of the story is, one good deed deserves another. The creaking wheel. A coachman, hearing one of the wheels of his coach make a great noise, and perceiving that it was the worst one of the four, asked how it came to take such a liberty. The wheel asked that from the beginning of time, grumbling has always been the privilege of the weak. The moral of the story is, much smoke, little fire. The mouse and the weasel. A lean and hungry mouse once pushed his way, not without some trouble, through a small hole in a corn crib, and fed there for some time so busily that when he would have returned the same way he entered, he found himself too plump to get through the hole, push as hard as he might. A weasel, who had great fun in watching the vain struggle of his fat friend, called to him and said, "Listen to me, my good mouse. There is but one way to get out, and that is to wait till you have become as lean as when you first got in." The moral of the story is, the remedy is often as bad as the disease. The flying fish and the dolphin. A flying fish, being pursued by a dolphin, swam for safety into shallow waters. Seeing the dolphin still after him, he came too far into shore and was thrown by the waves high and dry on the sand. The dolphin, in eager pursuit, was unable to stop himself and was also stranded. The flying fish, beholding the dolphin in the same condition as himself, said, "I will die with pleasure, for I see my enemy has met the same fate." The moral of the story is, revenge is sweet. The dove and the ant. An ant, going to a river to drink, fell in and was carried along in the stream. A dove pitied her condition and threw it into the river a small twig, by means of which the ant gained the shore. The ant afterwards, seeing a man with a bow aiming at a dove, stung him in the foot sharply and made him miss his aim, and so saved the dove's life. The moral of the story is, the grateful heart will always find a way to be of service. The Viper and the File. A viper entered a smith's shop, and he looked up and down for something to eat. He settled at last upon a file, and began to gnaw it greedily. "Bite away," said the file gruffly. "You'll get little from me. It is my business to take from all, and give to none." The moral of the story is, before you attack, know thine enemy. The Serpent and the Man. The child of a villager, while at play in a field in the back of his father's house, by chance trod upon a snake, which turned round and bit him. The child died of the bite, and the father, pursuing the snake, aimed a blow at him, and cut a piece off his tail. The snake gained his hole, and the next day the man came out and laid at the mouth of the hole some honey, meal, and salt, and made offers of peace, thinking to entice the snake forth and kill him. "It won't do," hissed out the snake. "As long as I miss my tail, and you your child, there can be no goodwill between us." The moral of the story is, a false truce is worse than battle. The Stag and the Fawn. A fawn once said to a stag, "How is it that you, who are so much bigger and stronger and fleeter than a dog, are in such fright when you behold one? If you stood your ground and used your horns, I should think the hounds would fly from you." "I have said that to myself, little one, over and over," replied the stag, "and made up my mind to act upon it. Yet no sooner do I hear the voice of a dog than I am ready to jump out of my skin." The moral of the story is, no arguments will give courage to a coward. The Owls, the Bats, and the Sun. The owls, bats, and several other birds of night used to meet together in a thick shade, where they abused their neighbors in a very sociable manner. Their satire at last fell upon the sun, whom they all agreed to be very troublesome, impertinent, and inquisitive. The sun chanced to overhear his critics, but contented himself with replying, "Ladies, I care little for your opinion, but I wonder how you dare abuse one who could in an instant destroy you. However, the only answer I shall give you, or the revenge I shall take of you, is to shine on." The moral of the story is, gossips are best answered by silence. That's the truth. That's how you deal with trolls. If you don't want to be trolled, don't interact with the trolls. It's that easy. The Fox and the Woodcutter. A fox, having been hunted hard and run a long chase, saw a woodcutter at work and begged him to help him to some hiding place. The man said he might go into his cottage, which was close by. He was no sooner in than the huntsman came up. "Have you seen a fox pass this way?" said they, whatever. The woodcutter said no, but pointed at the same time towards the place where the fox lay. The huntsman did not take the hint, however, and made off at full speed. The fox, who had seen all that took place through his chink in the wall, thereupon came out and was walking away without a word. "Why, how now?" said the man. "Haven't you got manners to thank your host before you go?" Yes, said the fox. "If your deeds had been as honest as your words, I would have given you my thanks." The moral of the story is, sincerity is shown by the heart. The Bull and the Goat. A bull, being pursued by a lion, spied a cave and fled towards it, meaning to take shelter there. A goat came to the mouth of the cave, and, menacing the bull with his horns, disputed the passage. The bull, having no time to lose, was obliged to make off again without delay, but not before saying to the goat, "Were it not for the lion that is behind me, I would soon let you know the difference between a bull and a goat." The moral of the story is, valor does not always show itself in blows. The Hunted Beaver. The tail of the beaver was once thought to be of use in medicine, and the animal was often hunted on that account. A shrewd old fellow of the race, being hard pressed by the dogs, and knowing well why they were after him, and had the resolution and the presence of mind to bite off his tail and leave it behind, and thus escaped with his life. The moral of the story is, the skin is nearer then the cloak. 1 second. The Cat and the Cock. A cat one day caught a cock and resolved to make a meal of him. He first asked him, however, what defense he had to make. "What reason can he give," he said, "for your screaming at night so? No honest body can sleep for you." "Nay," answered the cock, "I only crow in service of man, to tell him when it is time to begin work." "What nonsense you talk," said the cat. "You are mistaken if you think that such an excuse will do me out of my breakfast." The moral of the story is, no plea will protect the innocent from the unjust judge. The Dog and His Shadow. A dog, bearing in his mouth a piece of meat that he had stolen, was crossing a smooth stream by means of a plank. Looking in, he saw what he took to be another dog carrying another piece of meat. Snapping greedily to get this as well, he let go of the meat he had and lost it in the stream. The moral of the story is, catch at the shadows and you lose the substance. A lot of things do. The river fish and the sea fish. A large freshwater pike was carried out to sea by a strong current. He gave himself great airs on account of what he considered his superior race and descent, and despised the feast. Oh my God. And despised the sea fishes among whom he found himself. "You value yourself at a great price," said the little stranger. "But if ever it is our fate to come to the market, you will find that I am thought a good deal more of than you." The moral of the story is, size does not determine value. The peach, the apple, and the blackberry. A dispute once arose between a peach, an apple, and an apple as to which were the fairer fruit of the two. They were so loud in their wrangling that a blackberry from the next hedge overheard them. "Come," said the blackberry, who thought herself quite fine also, "we are all friends and all fair. Pray, let us have no quarrels among ourselves." The moral of the story is, know thyself. And I need a drink. Jupiter's Lottery. Jupiter, in order to please mankind, directed Mercury to give notice that he had established a lottery, in which there were no blanks, and that amongst a variety of other valuable chances, wisdom was the highest prize. It was Jupiter's command that in this lottery some of the gods should also become adventurers. The tickets being disposed of and the wheels placed, Mercury was employed to preside at the drawing. It happened that the best prize fell to Minerva, upon which a general murmur ran through the assembly, and hints were thrown out that Jupiter had used some unfair practices to secure the desirable lot to his daughter. Jupiter, that he might at once punish and silence these impious claims of the human race, presented them with folly in the place of wisdom, with which they went away. Oh my God. Jupiter, that he might at once punish and silence these impious clamors. Oh my God. Okay, these impious. Oh my God, why can't I speak all of a sudden? I can see the words, I know what the words are, but they won't come out my mouth. It's no fun. The impious clamors of the human race presented them with folly in the place of wisdom, with which they went away perfectly well contented. From that time, the greatest fools have always looked upon themselves as the wisest men. The moral of the story is, folly, passing with men for wisdom, makes each contented with his own share of understanding. And if that's not a thing to think about today, I don't know what is. Jesus Christ. The goose that laid the golden eggs. A certain man had a goose that laid him a golden egg every day. Being of a covetous turn, he thought if he killed the goose, he should come at once to the source of his treasure. So he killed her and cut her open. And when great was his dismay to find that her inside was no different from that of any other goose. The moral of the story is greediness overreaches itself. No worries, Metastop. You should all be doing things. Excuse me. All right. The lynx and the mole. Under the covert of a thick wood at the foot of a tree, as a lynx lay whetting his teeth and waiting for his prey, he spied a mole half buried under a hillock of her own raising. "Alas, poor creature," said the lynx, "how much I pity you. Surely Jupiter has always been very unkind, to debar you from the light of day which rejoices the whole creation. You are certainly not above half alive, and it would be doing you a service to make an end of you." "I thank you for your kindness," replied the mole, "but I think I have fully as much vivacity in my state and circumstances require. For the rest, I am perfectly well contented with the faculties that Jupiter has given me, who, I am sure, wants not our direction in distributing his gifts. I have not, 'tis true, your piercing eyes, but I have ears which answer all my purposes. Hark, for example, I am warned by a noise which I hear behind you to flee from danger." So saying, he crept into earth, while a javelin from the arm of a hunter pierced the quick-sighted lynx to the heart. The moral of the story is let none criticize nature. That's a combination of issues. The fact that I wear glasses, the way the rigging works, all sorts of things. I wouldn't fuss about it. Yep, glasses are always out here causing troubles. The man and his dog. A certain man, detained by a storm in his country house, first killed all of his sheep and then his goats for the maintenance of his household. The storm still continued. He was obliged to slaughter his yoke oxen for food. On seeing this, his dogs took counsel together and said, "It is time for us to be off. For if the master spare not his oxen who work for his grain, how can we expect him to spare us?" The moral of the story is, he is not to be trusted as a friend who ill treats those on whom he depends. The hunter, the fox, and the tiger. A certain hunter saw, in the middle of the field, a fox whose skin was so beautiful that he wished to take him alive. Having this in view, he found out his hole, and just before the entrance to it, he dug a large and deep pit, covered with slender twigs and straws, and placed a pile of horseflesh in the middle of the covering. When he had done this, he went and hid himself in a corner out of sight. And the fox, returning to his hole and smelling the flesh, ran up to see what a dainty morsel it was. When he came to the pit, he would fain have tasted the meat, but fearing some trick, he refrained from doing so, and retreated into his hole. Presently, up came a hungry tiger, who, being tempted by the smell and appearance of the horseflesh, sprang in haste to seize it, and tumbled into the pit. The hunter, hearing the noise made by the tiger and falling, ran up and jumped into the pit without looking into it, never doubting that it was the fox that had fallen in. But there, to his surprise, he found the tiger, which quickly tore him in pieces and devoured him. The moral of the story is, look before you leap. It's true, Dave, size does not determine value. Even weight doesn't determine value. Now, sleazy, many girls will agree with that, especially the fat ones. The Spanish Cavalier. One day, a quarrel about a lady happened between a Spanish cavalier and a Dutchman. Satisfaction was the word, and when they met to decide the dispute. Oh, and they meant to decide the dispute, whatever. The contest was fierce and bloody, for they closed at the first encounter. And the Don, being mortally wounded, fell down and cried out to an intimate friend of his who was running to his assistance, but too late. My good friend, for the love of heaven, be so good as to bury me before anybody strips me. Having said this, so great a quantity of blood flowed from his wounds that he died immediately. Now this odd request of the Spaniard to his friend raised everybody's curiosity, as it happens in things generally prohibited. There we go. To see him divested of his clothing, especially since it was a dying request, an entreaty of a worthy hero of that wise nation who never speak at random, nor drop a word that is not full of mysteries, and each mystery full of sense, so that everyone had a great desire to know the meaning of it. And, in spite of all his friend could do to prevent it, he was stripped immediately. Upon search, this spruce blade, who was completely dressed as a cavalier, with a curious ruff about his neck worth more than all the rest of his finery, was found not to have a shirt on his back, at which the spectators could not help smiling, although the event was so beautiful. The moral of the story is the vain prefer to honor life. I don't know about that one. Two soldiers and the robber. Two soldiers traveling together was set upon by a robber. The one fled away, and the other stood his ground, and defended himself with his stout right hand. The robber, being slain, the timid companion ran up and drew his sword and said, "I'll at him, and I'll take care he shall learn whom he has attacked." On this, he who had fought with the robber made answer, "I only wish that you had helped me just now, even if it had been only with those words, for I should have been more encouraged, believing them to be true. But now, put up your sword in its sheath, and hold your equally useless tongue, till you can deceive others who do not know you." The moral of the story is a coward is soon found out. The Ass and the Little Dog. The ass, observing how great a favorite a little dog was with his master, and how much caressed and fondled and fed with choice bits at every meal, and for no other reason than he could see but skipping and frisking about and wagging his tail, resolved to imitate him, and see whether the same behavior would not bring him similar favors. Accordingly, The master no sooner come home from walking and seated in his easy chair than the ass came into the room and danced around him with many an awkward gambol. The man could not help laugh aloud at the odd sight. The joke, however, became serious when the ass, rising on his hind legs, laid his 4 feet upon his master's shoulder, and braying in his face in the most fascinating manner, would fain have jumped into his lap. The man cried out for help, and one of his servants, running in with a good stick, laid it unmercifully on the bones of the poor ass, who was glad to get back to his stable. The moral of the story is a place for everyone, and everyone in his place. The envious and the covetous. 2 men, one a covetous fellow, and the other thoroughly possessed by the passion of envy, came together to present their petitions to Jupiter. The god sent Apollo to deal with their requests. Apollo told them that whatsoever should be granted to the first who asked, the other should receive double. The covetous man forbore to speak, waiting in order that he might receive twice as much as his companion. The envious man, in spitefulness of his heart, thereupon prayed that one of his own eyes might be put out, knowing that the other would have to lose both. The moral of the story is envy shoots at another and wounds itself. The Mouse and the Frog. A mouse and a frog lived some time in intimacy together, and the frog often visited the mouse's quarter and had been welcomed to a share of his store. So the frog invited the mouse to his house in return. But as this was across the stream, the mouse, alleging he could not swim, had hitherto declined to go. The frog, however, one day pressed him so much, offering at the same time to conduct him safely across, that the mouse consented. One of the 4 feet of the mouse accordingly bound to one of the hind legs of the frog by a stout blade of grass, and the friend set off across the stream. When about halfway across, it treacherously entered the frog's head to drown the mouse. He thought by this means he should have undivided possession of the latter's stock of provisions. He started for the bottom of the stream, but the struggles and cries of the mouse attracted the attention of a kite, who was sailing above in the air. He descended and caught up the mouse. The frog, being tied to the mouse, shared the same fate and was justly punished for his treachery. Hey Mofo Q, how you doing? The evildoer is often undone by his own scheme. It's the moral of the story. The Falcon and the Goose. A goose, who had strong reasons for thinking that the time of his sacrifice was quite near at hand, carefully avoided coming into close quarters with any of the farm servants or domestics of the estate on which he lived. A glimpse that he had once caught of the kitchen with its blazing fire and the cook chopping off the head of some of his companions had been sufficient to keep him ever after in dread. Hence, one day, when he was wanted for roasting, all the calling, clucking, and coaxing of the cook's assistants were in vain. "How deaf and dull you must be," said a falcon who noticed this, "to not hear when you are called, or to see when you are wanted. You should take pattern by me. I never let my master call me twice." "Ah," answered the goose, if falcons were called like geese, to be run upon a spit and set before the kitchen fire, then they would be just as slow to come, and just as hard of hearing, as I am now. The moral of the story is the errand makes the difference. The mountain in labor. In olden times, a mighty rumbling was heard in a mountain. This lasted a long time, till all the country round was shaken. The people flocked together from far and near to see what would come of the upheaval. After many days of waiting, a wise prophesying from the crowd. Out came a mouse. The moral of the story is, do not make much ado about nothing. The mule. A mule, well fed and worked but little, frisked and gamboled about in the fields and said to himself, "What strength, what spirits are mine? My father must surely have been a thoroughbred horse." He soon fell into the hands of another master, and was worked hard and but scantily fed. Thoroughly jaded, he now said, "What could I have been thinking about the other day? I feel certainly now that my father could have only been an ass." The moral of the story: depend not on ancestry. The Athenian and the Theban. An Athenian and a Theban were on the road together, and passed the time in conversation, as is the way of travelers. After discussing a variety of subjects, they began to talk about heroes, a topic that tends to be more fertile than edifying. Each of them was lavish in his praises of the heroes of his own city, until eventually the Theban asserted that Hercules was the greatest hero who had ever lived on earth, and now occupied a foremost place among the gods, while the Athenian insisted that Theseus was far superior, for his fortunes had been in every way supremely blessed, whereas Hercules had at one time been forced to act as a servant. And he gained at his point, for he was a very glib fellow, like all Athenians, so that the Theban, who was no match for him in talking, cried at last in some disgust, "All right, have your way. I only hope, when our heroes are angry with us, Athens may suffer from the anger of Hercules, and Thebes only from that of Theseus." The moral of the story: to each his own. The Boar and the Ass. A little scamp of an ass, meeting in a forest with a boar, came up to him and hailed with impudent familiarity. The boar was about to resent the insult by ripping up the ass's flank, but, wisely keeping his temper, contented himself with saying, "Go, you sorry beast. I could easily teach you manners, but I do not care to foul my tusks with the blood of so base a creature." The moral of the story is: scoffs are best paid with disdain. The Wind and the Sun. A dispute once arose between the north wind and the sun as to which was the stronger of the two. Seeing a traveler on his way, they agreed to see which Seeing a traveler on his way, they agreed to see which could the sooner get his cloak off him. The north wind began and sent a furious blast, which, at the onset, nearly tore the cloak from its fastenings. But the traveler seized the garment with a firm grasp, held it round his body so tightly that the north wind spent his remaining force in vain. The sun, dispelling the clouds that had gathered, then darted his genial beams on the traveler's head. Growing faint with heat, the man flung off his coat and ran for protection to the nearest shade. The moral of the story is: mildness governs more than anger. Better have a drink. Industry and sloth. An indolent young man, being asked why he lay in bed so long, jocosely and carelessly answered, "Every morning of my life I hear long causes. I have two fine girls named Industry and Sloth close at my bedside. As soon as ever I awake, pressing their different suits. One entreats me to get up, and the other persuades me to lie still. And then they alternately give me various reasons why I should rise and why I should not. In the meantime, as it is the duty of an impartial judge to hear all that can be said on either side before the pleadings are over, it is time to go to dinner." The moral of the story is: the lazy have more excuses for their sloth than the productive have for their industry. The Horse and the Lion. A lion, who had got old and infirm, saw a plump nag and longed for a bit of him. Knowing that the animal would prove too fleet for him in the chase, he had recourse to artifice. He gave out to all the beasts that, having spent many years in studying physics, he was now prepared to heal any malady or distemper which they might be afflicted. He hoped that by means to get admittance among them, and so find chance of satisfying his appetite. The horse, who had doubts of the lion's honesty, came limping up, pretending he had run a thorn into one of his hind feet, which gave him great pain. The lion asked that the foot might be shown to him, and he pored over it with a mock earnest air. The horse, slyly looking round, saw that he was preparing to spring, and vigorously sent both heels out at once, and gave the lion such a kick in the face that it laid him stunned and sprawling upon the ground. Then, laughing at the success of his trick, he trotted merrily away. The moral of the story is overcraftiness defeats itself. The Wolf and the Sheep. A wolf had been sorely worried and left for dead by the dogs. A wolf that had been sorely worried and left for dead by the dogs lay not far from a running stream. Parched with thirst, the babble of the brook sounded most temptingly in his ears, and he felt that one cool, delicious draught might yet restore him some hope of life. Just then a sheep passed near. "Pray, sister, bring me some water from yon string," said he. "Water is all I want. I do not ask for meat." "Yes," replied the sheep, "but I know very well that when I have brought you water, my body will serve for meat." The moral of the story is hypocritical speeches are easily seen through. Sweet dreams, Sleazy. The Wolf, the Fox, and the Ape. The wolf charged the fox before the ape as judge, with having stolen some meat that he had put by. The case was long and angrily contested, and the ape, having heard all that was to be said on both sides, announced his decision as follows: "You, Master Wolf, in spite of your complaints, do not appear to me to have had anything to lose, but I am forced to admit that you, Master Fox, have certainly stolen what is laid to your charge." The moral of the story is the dishonest get no credit. The Lion, the Ass, and the Fox. As an ass and a fox were rambling through a forest one day when they were met by a lion. The fox was seized with great fear and, taking the first opportunity of getting the ear of the lion, thought to obtain his own safety at the expense of his companion. "Sire," said he, "yonder ass is young and plump, and if your majesty would care to make a dinner off him, I know how he might be caught without much trouble. There is a pitfall not far away into which I can easily lead him." The lion agreed, and seeing the ass securely taken, began his dinner by devouring the traitor's fox, reserving the ass to be eaten at his leisure. The moral of the story is traitors receive no consideration, even from those whom they serve. Oh, you guys are silly. The Wolf and the Shepherds. A wolf, chancing to pass a shepherd's hut, saw some shepherds making merry over a joint of mutton. "A pretty row," quoth he. "Would these men have raised if they had caught me at such a supper?" The moral of the story is men are apt to condemn in others the very thing they themselves practice. That's so true. The village quack. A waggish, idle fellow in a country town, being desirous of playing a trick on the simplicity of his neighbors, and at the same time to put a little money in his pocket at their cost, advertised that he would on a certain day show a wheel carriage that should be so contrived as to go without horses. By silly curiosity, the rustics were taken in, and each succeeding group who came out from the show were ashamed to confess to their neighbor that they had seen nothing but a wheelbarrow. The moral of the story is what artful knavery one half of the world would impose upon the folly of the other. Oh my god. The Fox and the Mosquitoes. A fox was being tormented by a swarm of mosquitoes. When another fox offered to shoo them away, the first fox declined. "They will only be replaced by a hungrier swarm," he said, "and I'd rather have the full ones stay." The moral of the story is better a lesser problem than a worse one. Hey, Tris. Legion boys are talking about me? Yeah. Oh, they're good boys. Crotch chop. What? The Goat Herd and the Goats. During a snowstorm in the depth of winter, a goat herd drove his goats for shelter to a large to a large cavern in a rock. It happened that some wild goats had already taken refuge there. The man was so struck by the size and look of these goats, and with their superior beauty to his own, that he gave them all the food he could collect. The storm lasted many days, and the tame goats, being entirely without food, died of starvation. As soon as the sun shone again, the strangers ran off and made the best of their way to their native wilds. "Ungrateful beasts," cried he, "is this the way you reward he who has served you?" "How do we know," replied the last of the departing flock, "that you will not forsake your new friends in time of need, even as you forsook your old ones?" So the goat herd had to go goatless home, and well laughed at by all for his folly. The moral of the story is be true to your own. The Hen and the Swallow. There was once a foolish hen who sat brooding upon a nest of snake's eggs. A swallow, perceiving it, flew to her and told her what danger she was in. "Silly creature," she said, "you are hatching vipers. The moment they see the light, they will turn on you and wreak their venomous spite upon you." The moral of the story is beware the consequences of your actions. The Power of Fables. Demades, a famous Greek orator, was once addressing an assembly at Athens on a subject of great importance and tried in vain to fix the attention of his hearers. They laughed among themselves and watched the sports of the children, and in 20 other ways showed their want of concern in the subject of the discourse. Demades, after a short pause, spoke as follows. Circes one day journeyed in a company with a swallow and an eel. At this there was marked attention, and every ear strained now to catch the words of the orator. The party came to a river, continued he. The eel swam across, and the swallow flew over. He then resumed the subject of his harangue. A great cry, however, arose from the people, and Circes, they cried. What did Circes do? Why, the goddess was, and indeed is now, he replied, mightily offended the people should have their ears open to any sort of foolery, and shut to the words of truth and wisdom. The moral of the story is learn to listen wisely. Nice, Derp. The Peacock and the Crane. The peacock, spreading his gorgeous tail, stalked up and down in his most stately manner before a crane, and ridiculed him for the plainness of his plumage. "I am robed like a king," said he, "in gold and purple and all the colors of the rainbow. Well, just look at your plain coat." "Tut, tut," said the crane. "Which is better now, to strut about in the dirt and be gazed at by children, or to soar above the clouds, as I do?" The moral of the story is, do not mistake beautiful looks for noble character. The Moon and Her Mother. The Moon once begged her mother to make her a gown. "How can I?" she replied. "There's no fitting your figure. At one time you're a new moon, and another you're a full moon. And between the whiles you're neither one nor the other." Moral of the story is, there is no pleasing the fickle. The Thief and the Boy. A boy sat weeping upon the side of a well. A thief, happening to come by at just the same time, asked him why he wept. The boy, sighing and sobbing, showed a bit of cord and said that a silver tankard come off from it, and was now at the bottom of the well. The thief pulled off his clothes and went down into the well, meaning to keep the tankard for himself. Having groped about for some time without finding it, he came up again and found not only the boy gone, but his clothes also, the dissembling rogue having made off with them. The moral of the story is, it takes a thief to catch a thief. The Lark and Her Young Ones. A lark, who had young ones in a field of wheat that was almost ripe, was afraid lest the reapers should come before her young brood was fledged. Every day, therefore, when she flew away to look for food, she charged them to take notice of what they heard in her absence, and to tell her of it when they returned. One day, when she was gone, they heard the master of the field say to his son that the grain seemed ripe enough to be cut, and to go early tomorrow and desire their friends and neighbors to come and help reap it. When the old lark came home, the little ones fell quivering and chirping around her and told her what had happened, begging her to remove them as fast as she could. The mother bade them to be easy, "For," said she, "if he depends upon his friends and his neighbors, I am sure the wheat will not be reaped tomorrow." The next day she came out again and left the same orders as before. The owner came and waited. The sun grew hot, but nothing was done, for not a soul came. "You see," he said to his son, "these friends of ours are not to be depended on. So run off at once to your uncles and cousins and say I wish them to come betimes tomorrow morning and help us reap." To this the young ones, in a great fright, reported this to their mother. "Do not be frightened, children," said she. "Kindred and relations are not always very forward in helping one another. But keep your ears open and let me hear what you hear tomorrow." The owner came the next day, and finding his relations as backward as his neighbors, said to his son, "Now, George, listen to me. Get a couple good scythes ready against tomorrow morning, for it seems we must reap the wheat ourselves." The young ones told this to their mother. "Then, my dears," said she, "it is indeed time for us to go. For when a man undertakes to do his business himself, it is not likely that he will be disappointed." She at once removed her young ones, and the wheat was reaped the next day by the old man and his son. The moral of the story is, he who would have things well done must do them himself. The Thrush and the Swallow. A young thrush who lived in an orchard once became acquainted with a swallow. A friendship sprang up between them, and the swallow, after skimming the orchard and the neighboring meadow, would every now and then come to visit the thrush. The thrush, humping from branch to branch, would welcome him with his most cheerful note. "Oh, mother," he said to his parent one day, "never did any creature have such a friend as I have in the same swallow." "Nor did any mother," replied the patient bird, "ever has such a silly son as I have in the same thrush. Long before the approach of winter, your friend will have left you, and while you sit shivering on a leafless bough, he will be sporting under sunny skies, hundreds of miles away. The moral of this story is unequal friendships do not last. The Ass, the Lion, and the Cock. An ass and a cock, feeding in the same meadow, were one day surprised by a lion. The cock crowed loudly, and the lion, who was said to have a great antipathy to the crowing of a cock, at once turned tail and ran off again. The ass, believing it was from fear of him that the lion fled, pursued him, and as soon as they were out of hearing of the cock, the lion turned round upon the ass and tore him into pieces. The moral of the story is false confidences lead one to danger. The Eagle and the Fox. An eagle, looking around for something to feed her young ones with, spied a fox's club basking in the sun. She swooped upon him and was about to carry him off when the old fox came up and, with tears in her eyes, implored the eagle, by the love for which she, as a mother, felt for her own young, to spare this, her only child. The eagle, whose nest was very high in a tree, made light of the fox's prayers and carried the club to her brood. She was about to divide it among them when the fox, bent upon revenge, ran to an altar in a neighboring field on which some country people had been sacrificing a kid, and seizing thence a flaming brand, made towards the tree, meaning to set it on fire. The eagle, terrified at the approaching ruin of her family, was glad to give back the cub, safe and sound, to his mother. The moral of the story is measure for measure. Drink. The Old Woman and the Doctor. An old woman who had bad eyes called in a clever doctor, who agreed for a certain sum to cure them. He was a very clever doctor, but he was also a very great rogue, and when he called each day and bound up the old woman's eyes, he took advantage of her blindness to carry away with him some articles of her furniture. This went on until he pronounced the woman cured. Her room was then nearly laid bare. He claimed his reward, but the old lady protested. Though far from being cured, her sight was worse than ever. "We will soon see about that, my good woman," he said, and she was shortly summoned to appear in a court. "May it please your honor," she said to the judge, "before I called in this doctor, I could see a score of my things in my room that now, when he says I am cured, I cannot see at all." This opened the eyes of the court to the knavery of the doctor, who was forced to give the old woman her property back again and was not allowed to claim a penny of his fee. The moral of the story is knavery overreaches itself. Fortune and the Boy. A little boy, quite tired out with play, stretched out and fell sound asleep close to the edge of a deep well. Fortune came by, and gently waking him said, "My dear boy, believe me, I have saved your life. If you had fallen in, everybody would have laid the blame on me. But tell me truly, would the fault have been yours or mine?" The moral of the story is lay blame where it belongs. Heard that one before, but it's still a good moral. The Partridge and the Gamecocks. A certain man, having taken a partridge, cut his wings and put him in a little yard where he kept gamecocks. The gamecocks were not at all civil to the newcomer, who at first put his treatment down to the fact of his being a stranger. When, however, he found out that they frequently fought and nearly killed each other, he ceased to wonder why they did not respect him. The moral of the story is those who do not treat their own kindred well make poor friends. Why are you conflicted, derp? The Archer and the Dove. An archer, seeing a dove among the wild branches of an oak, raised his bow and aimed at the bird. Just then an adder, on which unknowingly he had trodden, bit him in the leg. Feeling the poison spreading through his veins, he threw down his bow and exclaimed, "Fate has justly brought destruction on me while I was contriving the death of another." The moral of the story is that he that mischief hatcheth, mischief always catcheth. Wow, how did he manage to do that? So I had such a problem saying it. It's hot as heck in my room, and I'm tossing around the idea of turning on the AC. Yeah, I understand that feeling. The Dog and the Crocodile. A dog running along the banks of the Nile grew thirsty, but fearing to be seized by the monsters of that river, he would not stop to quench his thirst, but lapped as he ran. A crocodile, raising his head above the surface of the water, asked him why he was in such a hurry. "I have often wished to meet you," he added, "and feel sure I should like you immensely, so why not stay and chat a while?" "You do me a great honor," replied the dog, "but I am afraid the pleasure would be all on your side, and to tell the truth, it is to avoid such companions as you that I am in such haste." The moral of the story is we can never be too carefully guarded against a connection with persons of bad character. The Dogs and the Fox. Some dogs once found a lion's skin and were worrying it with their teeth. Just then a fox came by and said, "You think yourselves very brave, no doubt, but if that were a live lion, you'd find his claws a good deal sharper than your teeth." The moral of the story, it is easy to act brave in the absence of danger. The Swallow and the Other Birds. A farmer sowing his field with flax was observed by a swallow who, like the rest of her tribe, had traveled a good deal and was very clever. Among other things, she knew that of this same flax, when it grew up, nets and snares would be made to entrap her little friends, the birds of the country. Hence, she earnestly besought them to help her in picking up and eating the hateful seed before it had time to spring from the ground. But food of a much nicer kind was then so plentiful, and it was so pleasant to fly about and sing, thinking of nothing, that they paid no attention to her entreaties. By and by the blades of flax appeared above the ground, and the anxiety of the swallow was renewed. "It's not too late," she said. "Pull it up, blade by blade, and you may then escape the fate which is otherwise in store for you. You cannot, like me, fly to other countries when danger threatens you here." The little birds, however, took no notice of the swallow, except to consider her a very troublesome person, whom silly fears had set beside herself. In the course of time the flax grew, ripened, and was gathered, spun, and made up into nets, as the swallow had foretold. When the nets were set, the birds could scarcely venture forth without some of their number being caught, and many a little captive thought, in dying, of the swallow they held to be so crazy, while the swallow, in despair at their thoughtless ways, had since preferred the society of men to that of her former companions. The moral of the story is prevention is better than cure. The Man and the Fox. A man whose vines and orchards had suffered greatly from the ravages of foxes one day caught one of these animals in a trap. In a great rage, he tied up the fox's tail with tow that had been steeped in turpentine and set light to it and let him run. Mad with pain and fright, the fox ran through a large field in which, ripened for the harvest, stood corn belonging to his tormentor. The corn caught fire, and the flames, fanned by the wind, spread over the field and laid it waste. The man lamented bitterly that he had not chosen some safer and less cruel means of revenge. The moral of the story is, do not let your anger crush your wisdom. The ass laden with salt and sponges. A man drove his ass to the seaside, and having purchased there a load of salt, proceeded on his way home. In crossing a stream, the ass stumbled and fell. It was some time before he regained his feet, and by that time the salt had all melted away, and he was delighted to find that he had lost his burden. A little while after that, the ass, when laden with sponges, had occasion to cross the same stream. Remembering his former good luck, he stumbled, this time on purpose, and was surprised to find his load, so far from disappearing, became as many times heavier than before. The moral of the story is the same ploy does not often succeed twice. The ass eating thistles. An ass laden with very choice provisions which he was carrying in harvest time to the field for his master and the reapers, stopped by the way to eat a large and strong thistle that grew by the roadside. Many people would wonder, said he, that such delicate viands within reach, I do not touch them, but to me this bitter and prickly thistle is more savory and relishing than anything else in the world. The moral of the story is one man's poison is another man's meat. The two lizards. Two lizards were basking under a wall. How contemptible is our condition, said one of them. We exist, 'tis true, but that is all, for we hold no sort of rank in creation and are utterly unnoticed by the world. Cursed obscurity! Why was I not rather born a stag to range at large, the pride and glory of some royal forest? Just then, a pack of hounds was heard in full cry after the very creature he was envying, who, despite being quite spent with the chase, was torn to pieces by the dogs in sight of the two lizards. And this is the lordly stag whose place you wish to hold, said the wiser lizard to his complaining friend. Let his sad fate teach you to be content with your lot. The moral of the story is contentment is not a matter of rank or position. The shepherd turned merchant. A shepherd who kept his sheep at no great distance from the sea one day drove them closer to the shore and sat down on a rock to enjoy the cool breeze. It was a beautiful summer day, and the ocean lay before him, calm, smooth, and of an enchanting blue. As he watched the white sails and listened to the measured plash of the tiny wavelets on the pebbled beach, his heart thrilled with pleasure. How happy, he exclaimed, should I be if, in a tight, trim bark of my own, with wings like a bird, I could skim that lovely plain, visit other lands, see other peoples, and become rich in ministering to their wants and pleasures. He sold his flock and all he had, bought a small ship, loaded her with dates, and set sail. A storm arose. The cargo was thrown overboard to lighten the ship, but in spite of all efforts, she was driven upon a rock near the shore and went to pieces. The shepherd narrowly escaped with his life, and was afterwards glad to earn his bread by watching the flock which had formerly been his own. In the course of time, when, by care and frugality, he again became possessed with the same amount of wealth, he happened to find himself sitting on the self-same rock, and on just another such lovely day as the one which he had resolved to become a merchant, the sea lapped temptingly on the beach at his feet. Foolish sea, the shepherd cried, do you think I am ass enough to try you a second time? You want some more dates, do you? The moral of the story is experience is a sure teacher. Hey Axis, how you doing tonight? Excuse me. I think we'll just do a couple more stories and then we'll call it a night. I'm starting to lose my voice. Would you believe we still have hundreds of pages to go yet? Let's see here, how many pages of stories are there? 451 pages of stories, my friends. Hey Drag, how you doing? Hercules and Plutus. When Hercules was raised to the dignity of a god and took his place on Olympus. He went round and paid his respects to all the gods and goddesses, excepting only Plutus, the god of wealth, to whom he made no sign. This caused much astonishment, and Jupiter, at the first favorable opportunity, asked Hercules for an explanation. "Why," answered he, "I have seen that god in the company of such rascals when on earth, that I did not know whether it would be considered reputable to be seen talking with him in heaven." The moral of this story is wealth and respectability are often at variance. Awesome. How was that? Did you have fun? The Beggar and His Dog. A beggar and his dog sat at the gate of a noble courtier, and were preparing to make a meal on a bowl of fragments that had been brought out by the kitchen maid. A poor dependent of his lordship's, who had been sharing a singular favor of a dinner at the steward's table, was struck with the appearance, and stopped a little to observe them. The beggar, hungry and voracious as any courtier in Christendom, seized with greediness the choicest morsels and swallowed them himself. Then the residue was divided into portions for his children. A scrap was thrust into one pocket for honest Jack, a crust another for bashful Tom. A luncheon of cheese was wrapped up with care for the little favorite of his hopeful family. In short, if anything was thrown to the dog, it was a bone so closely picked that it scarcely afforded a pittance to keep life and soul together. "How exactly like," said the dependent, "is this poor dog's case and mine. He is watching for dinner from a master who cannot spare it, I for a place from a needy lord who wants, and perhaps are greater than my own, and whose relations are more clamorous than any of this beggar's brats." The moral of this story is 'tis misery to depend upon patrons whose circumstances make their charity necessary at home. Hey Savage, how's it going? It's a different vibe to be drawing and listening to friendly athlete. The camel. When men first saw the camel, they were so frightened at his vast size that they fled away. After a time, perceiving the meekness and gentleness of his temper, they summoned courage to approach him. Soon afterwards, observing that he was an animal altogether deficient in spirit, they assumed such boldness as to put a bridle in his mouth, and to set a child to drive him. The moral of the story is use serves to overcome dread. Oh no, you're fine. These are short stories, so I have a moment in between to stop and check out chat. We're not going to be going too much longer because, as you can tell, my voice is starting to go. I need to start drinking some hot tea or something while I do this to keep things lubricated. The water alone is not cutting it. All right, Derp, sweet dreams. We're only going to do another 2 or 3 stories, I think. The Wolf in Disguise. A wolf, who by his frequent visits to a flock of sheep in his neighborhood began to be extremely well known to them, thought it expedient for the more successfully carrying on of his depredations to appear in a new character. To this end he disguised himself in a shepherd's habit, and then, resting his 4 feet upon a stick which served him by way of a crook, he softly made his approach towards the fold. It happened that the shepherd and his dog were both of them extended on the grass, fast asleep, so that he would certainly have succeeded in his project if he had not impudently attempted to imitate the shepherd's voice. The horrid noise awakened them both, and the wolf, encumbered with his disguise, and finding it impossible either to resist or flee, yielded up his life an easy prey to the shepherd's dog. The moral of the story is hypocrites frequently lay themselves open to discovery by over practicing their parts. The Ape and the Dolphin. A ship wrecked off the coast of Greece had on board a large ape kept for the diversion of the sailors. The ship went down, and the ape, with most of the crew, was left struggling in the water. Dolphins are said to have a great friendship for man, and one of these fishes, taking the ape for a man, came under him, and supporting him on his back, swam with him to the mouth of the harbor of Piraeus. "In what part of Greece do you live?" demanded the dolphin. "I am Athenian," said the ape. "Oh, then you know Piraeus, of course," said the dolphin. "No, Piraeus," said the ape, not wishing to appear ignorant to the dolphin. "I should rather think I did. Why, my father and he are first cousins." Thereupon the dolphin, finding that he was supporting an impostor, slipped from beneath his legs and left him to his fate. The moral of the story is the liar should take care to be well informed. The Fox in the Well. An unlucky fox, having fallen into a well, was able, by dint of great effort, to keep his head barely above water. While he was there struggling and sticking his claws into the side of the well, a wolf came by and looked in. "What, my dear brother," he said, with affected concern, "can it really be you that I see down there? How cold you must feel! How long have you been in? How came you to fall in? I am so pained to see you. Do tell me all about it." "The end of a rope would be of more use to me than all your pity," answered the fox. "Just tell me to set my foot once more on solid ground, and you shall have the whole story." The moral of the story is saying well is good, but doing well is better. Jupiter and the Herdsman. A herdsman, missing a young cow that belonged to the herd, went up and down the forest to seek it. Not being able to find it, he prayed to Jupiter and promised to sacrifice a kid if he would help him find the thief. He then went on a little further and suddenly came upon a lion, grumbling over the carcass of the cow and feeding upon it. "Great Jupiter," cried the man, "I promised thee a kid if thou wouldst show me the thief. I now offer thee a full-grown bull if thou wilt mercifully deliver me safe from his clutches." The moral of the story is the fulfillment of our wishes might lead to ruin. The Blind Sheep. A certain poor sheep was so unfortunate as some years before his death to become blind. The owl, who had assumed to himself the profession of occultist to His Majesty the Eagle, undertook to cure him. On the morning when the operation was to have been performed, the sheep placed himself in the seat and asked the oculist if all things were ready for cure. The oculist answered, "Yes, my instruments and plasters are all prepared and nothing is wanting." "Aye," said the sheep, "the things you have mentioned are of least importance towards giving me that satisfaction I desire by the recovery of my sight. Tell me, how goes the world?" "Why, even just as it did," said the owl, "when you fell blind." "Sayest thou so, friend?" replied the sheep. "Then prithee, hold thy hand and proceed no farther, for I would not give a blade of grass to recover my sight if I must again be punished in beholding enormities so odious in the eyes of all innocent creatures on earth. The moral of the story is no remedy for the world's ills are as great as an ill as any. Alright, whatever. That one doesn't quite make sense to me. The Boy Who Cried Wolf. A mischievous lad who was sent to mind some sheep used to cry in jest, "The wolf! The wolf!" When the people came running to the spot, he would laugh at them for their pains. One day the wolf came in reality, and the boy this time called, "The wolf! The wolf!" in earnest. But the men, having been deceived, disregarded his cries, and the sheep were left at the mercy of the wolf. The moral of the story is a liar cannot be believed, even when he speaks the truth. The Hawk and the Farmer. A hawk, pursuing a pigeon with great eagerness, was caught in a net which he had been set. Oh, let's try that again. A hawk, pursuing a pigeon with great eagerness, was caught in a net which he had been set. Why do I keep saying which he had been? That doesn't make it. It's not. He is not in the sentence. All right. One more time. A hawk, pursuing a pigeon with great eagerness, was caught in a net which had been set in a cornfield for the crows. The farmer, seeing the hawk fluttering in the net, came and took him. The hawk besought the man to let him go, saying piteously that he had done him no harm. "And pray, what harm had the poor pigeon you were followed done to you?" replied the farmer. Without more ado, he wrung off his head. The moral of the story is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. All right, this is the last one because I think I'm hearing myself squeak. And it's a longer one, so... This is one we should all know. The City Mouse and the Country Mouse. A country mouse, a plain, sensible sort of fellow, was once visited by a former friend of his who lived in a neighboring city. The country mouse put before his friend some fine peas and wheat stalks, and called upon him to eat heartily of the good cheer. The city mouse nibbled a little here and there in dainty manner, wondering at the pleasure his host took in such coarse and ordinary fare. Finally, the city mouse said to his host in their after-dinner chat, "Really, my good friend, I am surprised that you can keep such spirits in this dismal, dead and alive kind of place. You see here no life, no gaiety, no society, in short, but go on in a dull, humdrum sort of way from one year's end to another. Come now with me this very night, and see with your own eyes what a life I lead." The country mouse consented, and as soon as it was dark, off they started for the city, where they arrived at just the end of a splendid supper given by the master of the house, where our town friend lived. The city mouse soon got together a heap of dainties on a corner of the handsome carpet. The country mouse, who had never even heard the names of half the meat set before him, was hesitating where he should begin, when the room door creaked open, and in entered the servant with a light. Off ran the mice, but everything soon being quiet again, they returned to their repast, when once more the door opened, and the son of the master of the house came running in, followed by his little terrier, who ran sniffing to the very spot where our friends had just been. The city mouse was by that time safe in his hole, which, by the way, he had not been thoughtful enough to show his friend, who could find no better shelter than afforded by a sofa, behind which he waited in fear and trembling till quiet again was restored. The city mouse then called upon him to resume his supper, but the country mouse said no. "No, I shall be off as fast as I can. I would rather have my wheat stalk with peace and security, than all your fine things in the midst of such alarms and frights as these." The moral of the story is a crust with quietness is better than a feast eaten in fear. Well, I might next time go with Lovecraft or Poe as opposed to Aesop's Fables and save these to finish another time. Because there's over 400 of these and I would like to read something spooky in the spooky season. But that would be next week either way. This is now a Thursday thing. So I need to to give my voice a little bit of a break, maybe go have some tea and honey. But thank you guys very much for being here. I'm glad you're enjoying the readings. I'm still working on getting to that 3,000 watch hours. I'm just over, what is it? 1250. So not quite halfway there, but getting closer. So please, absolutely, if you have some time when your computer or something's just sitting around, if you want to go ahead and set up a playlist, or even if you just want to actually watch my stuff, please do that, because I'm trying to get those watch hours up so we can get to those memberships. But until then, guys, tomorrow night I'll be playing Baldur's Gate. Saturday will be 7 Days to Die, as well as Sunday. Monday I'll be doing Star Murata with Star Sand. And Wednesday, of course, is the midweek hump. Saturday, I will be on the Legion of Memers stream. I will be hosting For No Green Rocks and Extra Zero. So come by and catch that. And I think that about covers everything. Y'all have a very good evening. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will catch you later. Sweet dreams. Yeah, I live in Montana. I'm not worried about a jihad. Catch you later, guys. Bye.